Welcome to the number 9 special edition of the t-roh show. We have some information that we'd like to share with everybody, so this is the reason why we make these special editions. It's your host Keith. I got John with me,
Good evening, folks. This is
and
John, folks.
we're going to go over some things we actually found, just kind of off subject matter, just a little bit. We have a new Declaration of Independence we want to go over to show everybody what we're doing and explain what's going on, so you're fully understand what's happening here. And but this is some other stuff that we were finding on the trafficking that we thought was interesting on what these guys did. So we're piddling around, and we just happened to go to Title 18. I'll show you the I think it's I'll show you the title when we get to the top. We found this. It says there were some people that were claiming that Title 18, Section 6 definitions was stating that the United States of America 1789 version, lowercase t, the United States of America was an agent. I said that this doesn't make any sense. So we went in and looked around and found something actually more interesting than that alone. Words or any corporation in which the United States of America, and they're talking about this one. This is the 1789. This is the one where the prince over across the pond, the British, is the arch treasurer. Okay, and that's what happened in 1789. That's what the Masons did to the country. Is a stockholder. So I'll read that again. It says words or any corporation in which the United States of America is a stockholder. Now, this has its own constitution. This is supposed to be the collective 50 states of what everybody believes is the 50 states of the Union today under this particular entity here, under that 1789 Constitution. Now, how in the hell did it become a stockholder in anything? Can't do that, guys. That's and then they said in said Section 80 were omitted as unnecessary in the view of a definition of agency in Section 6 of this title. So what did we just read there? The collective 50 states can't be stockholders in anything. That means all judicial decisions within that state are tainted. Conflict of interest. That's why your courts aren't working. Anything that the local even your appeals and your Supreme Courts within the states, any decision they make are conflicts of interest, because any judicial decision they make is it could be towards the stocks that the state owns within the United States. So they took that out, and this is where they hit it. In view of definition of agency in Section 6 of this title. So we go over here, and this is department and agency defined. It says department means one of the executive departments enumerated in Section 1 of Title 5, unless the context shows that such term was intended to describe the executive, legislative, or judicial branches of the government. And it says the term agency includes any department, independent establishment, commission, administration, authority, board, or bureau of the United States, or any corporation in which the United States has a proprietary interest, unless the context shows that such term was intended to be used in a more limited sense. Proprietary is contractual, right there. Proprietary interest. Words or any corporation in which the United States of America is a stockholder. So now you understand why these big companies like Walmart and Microsoft and all that are doing so well. It's because the states are actually stockholders as agencies of the United States. Now you understand why you can't do anything. I mean, you're not going to get anywhere with that in any way, shape, or form. And you go into the court, man, you're done. If the stocks aren't in your favor, you're done. Now here's an interesting side note to this: is why is it that if they're a stockholder, where are those dividend checks coming from? Where'd they go? Just wondering. because on the IRS form it says, "Did you get any dividend checks this month?" But that they talk about this as far as being a citizen and all that. Here, I'll show you. So we go over here, and here's a court case, and I'll show you the court case in a minute. This was Title 18, Section 6. This was I told you I was going to show you what this was. Title 18, Crimes and Criminal Procedure, is fraud and false statements. It's funny that they put it under that. That's all I'm saying. They put that section under there. It says, "We think the suggestion has never been made, certainly never entertained by this court, that the United States may impose cumulative penalties above and beyond those specified by state law for infractions of the state's criminal code by its own citizens." I thought we just had residents. I didn't know that there were citizens there. "The affirmative of such of a proposition would obliterate this distinction between the delegated powers of the federal and those reserved to the states and their citizens. Okay, the implications from a decision sustaining such an imposition would be startling. The concession of such power would open the door to unlimited regulation of matters of state concern by federal authority. The regulation of the conduct of its own citizens belongs to the state, not the United States. The right to impose sanctions for violations of state laws inheres in the body of its citizens, speaking through their representatives. So, as far as the reservations of the 10th Amendment were qualified by the adoption of the 18th, the qualification has been abolished." This was dealing with liquor, basically. And what this was a case that was being done in dealing, I think, with the Social Security and the direct tax and all that stuff, I believe, because they say reference was made to the argument and decisions of this court holding that where the power to tax is conceded, the motive for the exaction may not be questioned. These are without relevance to the present case. This is the point here, is that the exaction is in no proper sense a tax, but a penalty imposed in addition to any state may decree for the violation of state law. The cases cited dealt with taxes concedingly within the realm of the federal power of taxation. They are not authority where, as in the present instance, under the guise of the taxing act, the purpose is to usurp the police powers of the state. And so basically what this was dealing with was the Revenue Act of 1924, special excise tax, all this other stuff. 1912, there were no federal taxes at all. And everybody went to school. Everything was fine. There were no services that were gone. Everybody pulled their weight. Everything was fine. There was nothing wrong with that. So basically, under this case here, this was United States versus Constantine in 1935. So what we're dealing with is the Revenue Act of 1926 imposed in addition to the 25 excise tax laid on retail liquor dealers. So they were trying to come in through the liquor thing. They were trying to get in, and they just basically couldn't. They couldn't get in this way. So what did they do? They had to move it offshore. And so we found something else that was actually interesting. At the same time, in their CFRs, this is in 1964, they basically just changed the term United States and changed the definition of a state, which created a whole new United States. So this is what they did. When used in regulations in the subpart, the term state includes the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and territories of Alaska and Hawaii before their admission as states. And when used in respect of services performed after 1960, Guam and America Samoa. It says when used in the regulations now, this is different. So they changed the terms. You got to realize that in regulations, these terms mean something different. When used in the regulations in this subpart, the term is different. So you got to realize how they switch around. They do things differently. the term United States when used in a geographical sense. Now we're not even talking about being a citizen of the United States or a U.S. citizen at all. That's nothing to do with it. This is just geographical. Since means the several states, this is their political unit right here. This is not the states of the Union. These are their political units they plugged in that are stockholders in corporations of the United States. So you get that? It's a turnaround there, including the territories of Alaska and Hawaii before their admission as states. This is the District of Columbia, Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So in a geographical sense, just go like this. Just do it this way means the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. That's the difference of that's the definition of the United States in a geographical sense. Okay, they mean the several states. This still is not the states of the Union. This isn't state of Florida, state of Georgia, and all that. It's their states they put in, their political units under federalism that they put in. A different state completely. That's a state within a state, I guess. It says when used in the regulations of this subpart with respect to services performed after 1960, the term United States also includes Guam and American Samoa, which the term is used in a geographical sense. The term citizen of the United States, now we're talking about this, okay? You notice how they changed right there? Citizen of the United States, now we're talking about status. That's something different. Includes a citizen of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands, an effective date after 1961, Guam and Samoa, American Samoa. So that's the term citizen of the United States, because it would say includes but not limited to a citizen of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. If it said not limited to, it would leave it open that it would mean the several states, but it doesn't. Okay, so when you kind of go back to this this one, what do you call it? This one statement. Let's go to find. Okay, here it is. It says the regulation of the conduct of its own citizens belong to the state, not the United States. This is still a political unit, folks. This is not the original state. If we keep trying to bring that about and tell you that it's a political unit, we brought this out in the last couple of t-roh shows. It's still not the state. But if you say this and say, look, its own citizens belong to the state, not the United States, then you get charged with being a sovereign citizen or domestic terrorist. That's what happens there. You start saying that, well, I'm a citizen of so and so state and not of the United States. Like, oh, you're anti-government, sovereign citizen. It's basically a death threat, because anybody that's called a sovereign citizen is considered a domestic terrorist, and under international law, domestic terrorists can be shot on sight. So if anybody ever says that to you, that's a death threat. So back in the old days, I guess back in the before it was around 1781, the people back then that fought the Revolutionary War thought that citizens and nationals were the same as slaves, or citizens and subjects were the same thing. So they wanted to be nationals. And nationals can have a representative form of government, or they can represent their own country. That's how that operates. It's a big difference between this whole conglomeration of crap. Okay, so that's why we have American nationals here. You can be a resident, so we can legally talk to you. You're not being you're being brought back to the states of the Union, and we're not trafficking you. This is done by your political will. We're just moving your person back to the original states, and then you can become a national there, which now you become a representative of your own country. And that's what, or you can use representatives. It's either way, it doesn't matter. But anyways, I thought this was interesting here, what they were talking about as far as the United States and their states. actually being stockholders. That's actually kind of a joke. So at any rate, I mean, you're not going to get going back to that. You're not going to get a fair trial anywhere. I don't care if it's traffic court. I don't care what court it is. They're going to wait and see what the stocks are going to do before they make their decision. And whatever decision it makes, people go tell the judges, that's fraud. That's this. This is not the truth, and all this kind of crap. Well, they're right. But they don't understand how they're doing it, and or why they're making these decisions. And it just means that decision either affects or does not affect the stock market and the prices on the stock market. That's it. That's all it is. People think that they're real deep and intelligent, and no, it's just simple. It's just money. It's a real simple thing that that's how they think. They go into it quite deep and get into massive amounts of theories, and it doesn't go anywhere. You end up looking like a conspiracy theorist, and really it's not. It's just, hey, prices are down this week, so we've got to pump some money into the stock market, so we're going to pump it in, and we're going to make this decision. You're going to pay this fine. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And then they have other people coming in. They're saying, yeah, you guys, they through Nexus, which they do. I think they trade those cases and all that. And those cases, the reason why they're able to trade them is because they do affect the stock market and the prices of the stocks. So that's how it operates. It's fraud and crap, and there's no way you're going to get anywhere, but that is what it is. And this is the reason why we're doing this. The new Declaration of Independence of the Government of the United States of America and the American National Union of the United States of America. This encompasses all the 50 states of the original Union. That's the state of, not lowercase s state. So we wanted to go over this and let you know. We're going to talk a little bit about it, what the intent is behind it, and what's happening here. Okay. So there comes a time when human beings must embrace the light of freedom over the darkness of oppression. In this time of transition, men and women must put away childish notions of disparaging political ideologies and the phantom of trust of those that continue on their path towards darkness and lead towards that end of eternal damnation. So these people that are using these decisions to affect the stock market and money, it's just based on greed. It's their own greed. So this should explain your CAFR accounts, where that money is coming from. Those are dividend checks and all that, but you don't ever see any of that. So they're making decisions based on your life, and you need to get rid of that phantom of trust, because they're not making decisions in your best interest at all. You can see that with the country and what's going on with the country now. Those that continue to wage war against the light of freedom of choice, because that choice is moving further and further away, because they're making war against it, shall meet their end in the afterlife, for this purgatory is created for the soul to choose the light of freedom or the darkness of oppression. Okay, and what this basically is that earth is nothing more than purgatory. It's the place between what they call heaven and hell. So that's where you're here. You're here to make a decision. Are you going to choose the light of freedom or the darkness of oppression? The British Empire has once again deceived its way to power for the sole purpose of exacting its darkness of oppression against those that perceive as its enemy of the light of freedom. Next, I'm going to explain that. The British Empire is a conglomeration of many, many monarchs, okay? And the United States have joined them, which was wholeheartedly against the law. So the British Empire has once again deceived its way to power for the sole purpose of exacting its darkness of oppression against those that it perceives as its enemy of the light of freedom. So the British Empire believes they're under the light of freedom, that they're doing right, but they're actually not. They're deceived. The British Empire itself believes its cause is righteous, that is coming from the highest throne in heaven, and therefore everyone must submit to it. So they literally believe, which we go on to talk about here in just a little while, that they are the ancestors to the throne of David. So they believe you should automatically submit because that's what Yahweh says. And yes, they use the term Yahweh. The British Empire believes it is blessed with the light of freedom that emanates from Yahweh and heaven itself. However, the British Empire has been blinded by the darkness of oppression, and has been enforcing its creed of darkness upon all other nations, states, and countries by assuming control over their internal and external affairs, thereby creating superpowers of destruction. And you have five major superpowers, which is China, Russia, United States, and do you remember the other one, John?
That'd be India.
Yeah, it was in that Atlantic Charter. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, I don't remember all of them in that charter.
Okay. Okay, the British Empire has assumed a position of the throne of Yahweh. See, when you start involving yourself under the Atlantic Charter in the internal and external affairs of countries, now you're under the throne. You've taken the throne of Yahweh, because that's his job. Over the inhabitants in and of the world in the year 1941 through its Atlantic Charter. After becoming drunk with blood and the power over the collective victory of World War II. So a bunch of people died in World War II. They thought it was their victory, meaning the monarchs and the many others that have joined them. And they thought that it was theirs. So they were blessed by the Most High. The drunkenness has become so severe that the British Empire forgot where its victory emanated and therefore has fallen from grace. They thought it was their victory. Don't do that. This British Empire plan started before the Revolutionary War of 1776, as imparted by General Cornwallis to the United States of America and the Continental Congress thereof. So the British Empire decreed that America would unknowingly serve its cause without the knowledge of the servants. That's called slavery. This act by the British Empire is well known as trafficking and man stealing in all its forms, in violation of all 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The British Empire, also known as the Crown, is responsible for all the blood it has spent in multiple wars, thereby implementing starvation, multiple human rights violations, multiple violations of the law of nations, multiple violations of the law of war, multiple violations of the Geneva Convention against its own people, and many millions of people that live abroad that have been unknowingly trafficked under its rule, thereby causing liability upon the souls of men. So you have to be very careful by accepting things like this, because when you do, you fall under the same type of thing. You're going to have this is going to be a little blinded, so I'm trying to find the charter. But if I can't find it, it's not a big deal. All right. The British Empire in the Netherlands has crossed the line of royal decency in the name of its religious mission. And we'll tell you what the religious mission is in a minute. And through its federal corporation known to the world as the United States. The ideology of peace that emanates from the British Empire's submission to it, which means you don't have any choice. You know what their idea of peace is? Do what we tell you to do. That's their idea of peace. I've witnessed this firsthand. If you do what we tell you to do, we'll have peace. Not the light of freedom of choice that emanates from heaven. That means they're not serving heaven. And therefore, the government of the United States of America must act to remove these chains of oppression. Therefore, it is hereby published a new Declaration of Independence against the British Empire in all its forms, citing all of its crimes against humanity attached hereto, and declare the British American Union the enemy of humanity for its crimes against humanity. For it has condemned itself by making a deal with the devil, and has spread those lies and deceit as a vehicle for hell itself, to cause strife and contention among the nations and states, to achieve nothing more than false peace. False peace means no choice. You do what we tell you, we won't attack you. You do what we tell you, we won't kill you. If you do what we tell you, you'll have a job, you'll have this, you'll have that. You just won't have anything else. You won't have a spirit, you won't have a soul, you won't have your own thoughts, you won't have anything. And that's it. That's their goal. We've witnessed this time and time again. The government of the United States of America itself has never knowingly joined the aforementioned union. However, the British Empire delves into the most heinous of international crimes where it assumes meeting of the minds where it does not exist. They just tell you stuff and, oh, you didn't say anything? Okay, we got a meeting of the minds. We gotta do, we got a deal. Pay the fine. It assumes loyalty to its cause without publishing its claim to the throne of David while using those people known as Israelis as cannon fodder. They have no intention of letting the Israelis run the throne of David in any way, shape, or form. No intention whatsoever. They're using them as cannon fodder against the Palestinians. It assumes ownership and changes the status of others without permission or consent. That's called trafficking in persons. It trespasses without remorse. They came in and changed the whole United States. They changed everything. They didn't care. It assumes power of attorney when it cannot rule itself. They want to speak for you, but they can't see their own faults. It charges without authority. It convicts in its star chambers and assumes its own international immunity from recourse. Star chamber courts are people that come together at night and they have a court and they decide who's guilty and who's not. Nobody's there, they just decide it. It secretly supplants its agents in other countries, wherein those agents claim allegiance to a secret master and create strife and contention against its people as a diversion from the truth. So there's your grand masters, your secret societies, the lodges, the Masonic lodges and temples. They create strife and contention, which is nothing more than causing problems so that they can charge people to make money, to bolster their stock market and make it appear as if they are successful. And, how are they not blessed? They're successful. It reduces governments to mere corporate citizens and steals from the people of those states while claiming rights under international law to get away with the booty. Okay, so they reduce governments to mere corporate citizens and then steal from you. And then turn around and say, oh, no, this is the state. It's the authority of the state. It's a complete fraud. It slanders those people under threat of murder to hide its crimes. In most cases, carries out those murders to hide evidence and remove witnesses. This is what we were talking about with people that were investigating them. They call them anti-government, those kind of people. It threatens nuclear retaliation against countries that attempt to handle its own affairs. Does that all the time. It builds tunnels under countries as a presence of imminent threat for the purpose of control. That's been proven. It murders professors, inventors, scientists as political dissidents if they tell the truth. Don't need to say anything about that. It funds both sides of every conflict and walks away without punishment, guilt, or remorse, all the while presenting itself as a champion of peace. It condemns slavery publicly, only to recreate it under a different classification beyond its borders. So when they start condemning slavery, that means they're getting ready to spread it. Watch it. When they come back and come out and start speaking out against slavery or racial, or if they're speaking out against hatred and racial hatred and stuff, they're getting ready to spread it as far as they possibly can. That's what they're telling you. That's a notice. Here, we're going to spread racial hatred. Anything they come out against, they're actually spreading and they're for. They're just trying to spread it out. And it's how they operate. It hijacks private prayer and assumes itself through coveting and jealousy as a part of all spiritual relationships, thereby creating itself into an idol in violation of the first commandment. So they're saying you have to come through me. You have to come through the church. You have to come through priests and all that to get to God. So they hijack that private prayer that you're supposed to pray in the closet and assumes itself through coveting and jealousy as a part of all spiritual relationships. And didn't Francis come out and say, if you were, you're not a Christian, if you're not a part of the church? He did say it. So he created himself an idol to put someone before the Most High. In more detail, the aforementioned paragraph by sequence of events. The British Empire through the 16 and 1700s conquest was an acknowledged way to expand an empire. And the Spanish, Dutch, and British built great navies to do so. So they're all involved. However, such military-based oppression became too obvious for proving the intent of willful oppression. So the British created the United States as a country, which would help bring freedom to countries around the world throughout the 20th century, all the while using the facade of freedom to bring them under a debt-based globalist banking system, which is what they did. The British Empire staged the Revolution of 1776, in which it played both sides against each other, thereby placed both sides into its debt. The British Empire created a fraudulent treaty of peace in the year 1783 with an entity of its own creation, and further created its own private central bank in conjunction with the Netherlands on Manhattan Island. That was the Bank of New York. That's called the Bank of New York Mellon today. Same bank, of which all court cases go through. Everything goes through that bank. The British Empire forced a constitution of its own creation, providing the private Masonic order corporate rule over the established country known as the United States of America. And they did. That was completely against the people and their political will. I don't care if it says unanimous consent. They always use those words. The British Empire created a war of 1812, which destroyed many original records of the people of the States of the Union, thereby implementing the introduction of its Foreign American Bar Association and Lawyers Guild to rule a people that were not aware of its presence within. There was even a publication way back when. I remember seeing it a couple of years ago. They didn't know what a bar association was. They said, who are these people that call themselves attorneys in a bar association? It was right in the newspaper. They didn't know. They just showed up. The British Empire forced bankruptcies by international bankers, claimed a debt that never existed against its own international entities, wherein foreigners were trafficked and held as surety for its debt, enslaving said victims for their lifetime. How many people know any of this happened from cradle to grave? You know how many people there are that do that don't know any of this? They think it's their country. The British Empire created private international agreements under its private international law that included but not limited to the Atlantic Charter of 1941. Go look that up. And traffic persons into the use of private trust, internal revenue, to facilitate human trafficking under the guise of Social Security, forced payment of taxes to allegedly fund the government, when those funds were really a tribute and payment to the Crown and the Vatican. The British Empire has used its United States as the alleged beacon of freedom, and the US dollar, aka petrodollar, and the US military to financially enslave billions worldwide. How is it when a country has a war and they win, the losing side sends them a bill? The hell's that all about? The British Empire is nothing more than a compact of self-proclaimed royalty and international bankers from around the world that play chess with countries as a game with real-life consequences, wherein it is spoken from the Most High Yahweh that life on this planet is not a game. To work out wicked schemes is like a sport to a fool, but wisdom is for the man of understanding. Nor will any true royal ever profit from a claimed throne. The British Empire is in violation of many laws in place by the Most High Yahweh, thereby declaring themselves impostors as false kings and queens in and of the world, and at the same time claiming the throne of David for themselves. Deuteronomy says this about this. You can look at this yourself and read it. But I can read it to you. When you come to the land of your Lord your God is giving you and taking it over and live in it and say, I will select a king like all the nations surrounding me. You must select without fail a king whom your Lord or your God chooses. From among your fellow citizens, you must appoint a king. You may not designate a foreigner who is not of one of your fellow Israelites. Moreover, he must not accumulate horses for himself or allow people to return to Egypt to do so. For the Lord has said you must never again return that way. Furthermore, you must not marry many wives, lest his affections turn aside, and he must not accumulate much silver and gold. When he sits on his royal throne, he must make a copy of this law on the scroll given to him by the Levitical priests. It must be within him, with him constantly, and he must read it as long as he lives, so that he may learn to reveal the Lord his God and observe all the words of this law and these statutes and carry them out. Then he will not exalt himself above his fellow citizens. There's Queen Elizabeth there, and William and all those whatever, or turn from the commandments to the right or left, and he and his descendants will enjoy many years ruling over his kingdom in Israel. Okay, so they're not supposed to have 6 billion acres and unlimited bank accounts. That's not what's supposed to happen. Those are false kings and queens. They're all false. Therefore, this publication by the government of the United States of America and the American National Union of the United States of America is prima facie evidence of no to the British Empire, and shall only accept the throne of the Most High Yahweh, creator of all things, through his son Yahushua, as a form of peaceful settlement of disputes, where all evidence shall be heard at the feet of our creator. If the British Empire wishes to dispute or object to this, the new Declaration of Independence, by shunning the existence of the United States of America and the government and union thereof. You want to shun it? It's on. The British Empire, British agents. Now this is what we've named them. All lawyers, judges, officers, and the local, state, and federal side are nothing more than British agents, and we've proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt. From this point forward, that's what we're going to refer them to or as. They're British agents. That's it. We're not going to acknowledge him by anything else. You got a local judge, that's a British agent. Local prosecutor, British agent. They're all British agents. Shall never be allowed to file one or more charge against anyone outside of their borders, nor traffic in persons within its borders, for they have spent their righteousness into oblivion. There's so many lies going on, folks. A liar can't constantly come back and sell his lie as the truth over and over again and keep getting away with it. And then what? He has some kind of legal authority to charge something? This, all the states are freaking they're stockholders in these large companies. Come on, really? You gonna give that still give that credence and still give that some kind of standing? It's a freaking joke. It says, for they must repent for their crimes against humanity for the rest of their days by confessing their sins to their victims and accepting whatever punishment that the heavens brings upon them, in order that their souls receive salvation and eternal life through Yahushua. Yahweh declared that all men were created equal, which cannot be questioned nor changed, and therefore the government of the United States and the American National Union of the United States of America of 1774 will not question the love that the British Empire has for Yahweh or Yahushua. Because, see, they sell this to their agents that they're working for God. And they're using their love for God against them to do these heinous crimes. That's how it operates. And that's how twisted a lot of these guys are. They think they're right. The cops think they're right, but they're actually British agents. They're being sold this thing that they work for God. We, the people for the United States of America, only pray to Yahweh that the British Empire observe the laws of Yahweh as perfected by Yahushua, and restrain their overzealous love to condition of obedience rather than eager to please zealots, ready to prove their allegiance at the expense of the innocent. Islam does that all the time. They'll kill people for their love for Allah, and then when they figure out they're innocent, then they don't say anything. It says further acts of strictocracy are to cause harm to the innocent. Okay, and this is a military type government right here. That's what that means. Preventing equity of redemption on any level. It is known and established that the law of nature is superior in obligation to any other. It is binding on all countries and at all times. No human laws are valid if opposed to this, and all which are binding derive their authority either directly or indirectly from it. And that's in the law of nations. The government of the United States of America and the American National Union of the United States of America hereby declares independence from the British Empire in all its forms. And on this 330th, 13th day in the year of Yahweh 6019, translation, 26th day of January in the year 2018. So declared and published by the government of the United States of America and the American National Union on this 313th day of the year of Yahweh 6019. If you want to sign on to this, I'm going to show you here in a minute where you can go. We did publish this in the newspaper, and you can go to reignoftheheavens.com, and you can add your name and we will publish it. Just go to reignoftheheavens.com. Here it is here. And you click this. It's right here on the left. It's not going anywhere. And you can get a copy of it yourself, or you can go to this link right here. It'll click and you can sign it. And some people already have. We've already got 27 entries. It wasn't in there for 24 hours, and people were signing it already to get away from this. And here it is right here. And all you got to do is fill that out, and then we will publish it for you. And it's usually published within about 24 hours. And you do have to electronically sign it, which means that it is legally binding. So you did, in fact, sign it. Any online signature like that is binding in any court anywhere. And when you do this, you can go ahead and it will download for you. You just got to click it right here. It'll come up in a minute. I'm sharing screens, so my bandwidth is a little bit slow. Yeah, it's a little slow. Okay, I'm not going to go through that. Okay, John, you got anything to add?
Nope, so I think you covered it pretty close. Got just about everything in there that needed to be.
Okay, and we've got I'd still like to see that Atlantic Charter.
Yeah, yes, sir. That's the only thing we didn't actually show.
Yeah, it's really bad. I'd like to get a copy of that if you can find it anywhere. I should have brought that up before.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll look on the internet. I think you can find it on the internet.
I hadn't been able to find it anywhere on my computer.
Okay. Okay, they've got one. I think it's at the United Nations. There it is. And this is it here. It says it was not a treaty between two powers. Well, that tells you something. It tells you what's going on. There it is. Okay. It was. It's a charter. A charter is nothing more than a corporation, a different corporation that's being created. because that's what charter means. So just read some of this. This is their countries seek no aggrandizement or territorial other. Okay, so they're not seeking any territory, which means it's being done on paper. That's a company or a charter, a corporation. Second, they desire no territorial change that do not accord with the freely expressed wishes of the peoples concerned. Okay? They respect the rights of all peoples that choose the form of government under which they live. They have to put that in there. Or it says they will live. Well, what do you mean they will live? They should have a government there already. And they wish to see sovereign rights and self-government restored to those who have been forcibly deprived of them. So fourth, they will endeavor, with due respect for their existing obligations, to further the enjoyment by all states, great or small, victor or vanquished, of access on equal terms to the trade and to the raw materials, which is the total freaking lie, by the way, the world which are needed for their economic prosperity. We have more um, people that are starving today than at any other time. They desire to bring about the fullest collaboration between all nations and economic field in the object of securing for all improved labor standards, economic adjustment, and social security. Boom. This is what replaced the United States, the Constitution of the United States. It was this charter. This Constitution of the United States was already another charter. So they went and bankrupted it and then started a brand new charter. So six, after the final destruction of the Nazi tyranny, they hope to see establish a peace which will afford to all nations, by the way, they're the ones that created it, the means of dwelling in safety within their own boundaries, and which will afford assurance that all men in all the lands may live out their lives in freedom from fear and want. Such a peace should enable men to traverse the high seas and oceans without hindrance. They believe that all the nations of the world, for realistic as well as spiritual reasons, must come to the abandonment of the use of force. Boom, there it is. Okay, they're going after and assuming authority over all of this. That's where they nailed it. Okay, so like I said, they start saying all these things, but actually they're doing the opposite. For realistic as well as spiritual reasons. Okay, since now they're enforcing their own religion right here for spiritual reasons, and must come to the abandonment of the use of force. Well, okay, so who's going to be who's going to be the using the force to stop the use of force? It's the exact opposite. Since no future peace can be maintained if land, sea, and air armaments continue to be employed by nations, now they're telling what nations are going to be done, what they're going to be doing. This is what we mean by they went into the internal and external affairs of all countries, which threaten or may threaten aggression outside of their frontiers. They believe the pending establishment of a wider and permanent system of general security. No, that means general government, that the disarmament of such nations is essential. So now they're going to take all your guns away. They will likewise aid and encourage all other practicable measures which will lighten for peace-loving peoples the crushing burden of armaments. See what we mean, folks? This is where they went. And if you don't believe me, the signatories of the United Nations Declaration subscribe to the common program of purposes, the President of the United States of America, and the Prime Minister of Mr. Churchill, representing His Majesty's government, the United Kingdom. This is when the United States joined the British American Union and the British Empire. And they had to leave the States of the Union. It's no more. It's gone. I think they have another page here. This is where they brought Russia in, the Moscow Declaration on General Security. So it was United States, United Kingdom, USSR, Chinese ambassador. So the Chinese. Okay, so 1, 2, three, four. I think it was five countries that got involved in this. And those who are now superpowers: United Kingdom, Soviet Union, and China. They're all superpowers now. Then, before the establishment of the General International Organization as contemplated in Moscow Declaration, a number of United Nations conferences were held to discuss certain special problems. As a result of these conferences, a number of specialized agencies were subsequently established. Why is it that these countries took on these problems? Who gave them that authority to do that? That was Germany's problem. Germany needed to fix it. Why is it that just because Hitler came in and did what he did, that all of a sudden these five countries now have a worldwide authority and can go into any country they want and disarm everybody? This is what we mean by makes no sense. This is right on their website, by the way. The agreement creating the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration was signed in Washington on November 4th, 1943. This was 2 years after the Atlantic Charter, by representatives of 44 nations on the following day. First UNH, Okay, the United States Monetary and Financial Conference was held in Brentwood, New Hampshire. And this whole thing, folks, the way it started was a complete violation of law of nations, biblical law, every law basically on the planet. They had no authority to do what they were doing. And they still don't have that authority. They can't sit and start telling other countries what to do, how you're going to do it and all that. That's what they call communism. And communism completely gets rid of spiritualism. Under communism, there is no God. The state is the God. So there is no such thing as a communist utopia. There is no religion. There's no thinking. There's no nothing. There's no praying. You have to pray to the state because the state's your God. It's great for the atheist, but not for anybody else. So now you understand what happened back then, and now you hopefully you understand why we did this declaration. And you can download this as a PDF if you want, the whole chapter. So we hope that you understand where all this comes from. There was the principal organs. They started bringing it all out. The International Court of Justice, Secretariat, all that other stuff. So the United States embarked, in violation of its own constitution, its own charter, and its own everything, embarked on creating a world government and joined the British Empire and put all of its British agents within the country, trafficked you offshore, and when they did that, you don't get a dividend check. Thank you for listening to this special edition number 9. We hope you learned something, and like we said before, we like the subscribes. Anybody that wants to come on and start doing any sort of attacking because you can't handle the information, we just delete those because you're just going to have to go get some counseling. We don't really have time to mess around with that. Trying to explain things to people. And we're not going to try to explain things to people on YouTube and your comments and things like that. If you want to make a comment, you can make a comment. We don't care. Just don't attack the host or the co-host and everything in the t-roh. We're doing this out of the kindness of our heart. We're just showing you stuff. If you can't handle the information, shut the program off. That's how we see it. So thanks for listening. We will see you next week.